it hit me like a ton of bricks.
It was the last straw.
It was, because I had gotten used to kind of being a punching bag. When I ran for the first time, the statewide GOP sent out a huge mailer about me. I gave the speech. I put a video of it up online, and within 24 hours, 12 million people saw it. This is the same type of language that led a gunman to open fire at a pizza parlor in DC, thinking that there were groomers led by Hillary Clinton who were keeping kids trapped in a basement. There were a lot of people who donated to me and knocked doors for me, and I felt like I had let everybody down. I think Democrats are always looking for who's the next Barack Obama. I met somebody who said, you know, I have ADHD, and it sounds like you're going through a lot of what I went through.
I've learned more from failures than I have from successes.
Yeah, so I wouldn't want to warn myself, you know, you gotta go through the hard things to figure out who you are and how you navigate them.
Welcome back to Casual Conversations with Mallory McMorrow. This week, we are honored to have a very special guest, Senator Mallory McMorrow from the 8th Senatorial District, state of Michigan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mario. Good to see you.
So I mentioned the 8th District. A lot of our viewers kind of get confused with all the numbers and who represents what, but you actually have a very unique district. So why don't you let's start off by telling us what the 8th District actually encompasses.
Sure. And first of all, nobody should ever feel bad about not knowing the districts by district numbers, because they're all about to change again. But the 8th District is currently north and northwest Detroit from 96 north. And then 11 other municipalities all along Woodward Avenue. So Royal Oak, Oak Park, Royal Oak Township, Clawson, Ferndale, Pleasant Ridge, Huntington Woods. I could keep going, but you get the idea.
Yeah. Now, so you mentioned it's going to change again. When is the change going to affect? How did this all come about? Because we just elected you for this current 8th District. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, we're going to make some more changes. What happened?
So, in as short as I can condense it, voters back in 2018 created Michigan's Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, which finally, and I say that this is a good thing, took the process of drawing maps out of the hands of the legislature and gave it to real people. I think the important thing to note was this was our first election cycle with this process in place. These were regular people. Their names were drawn by lottery ball numbers, and you could actually watch them drawing these maps live on YouTube. So given it was our first pass, I think everybody did their best, but the courts were struck down after a court challenge for violating the Voting Rights Act, and they gave the commission a chance to redraw them. So the commission started with the state house districts, which will actually go into effect for this election cycle. But for the Senate, they won't go into effect until 2026. So I am still in office in this district until 2026.
And then after 2026, they redrew the new district. And the new district will, and I think it'll be better just to say, what will it exclude that you currently have?
So I am somebody, I'm superstitious. I don't want to say that it's final until it's final, because the court hasn't approved what's been submitted yet. But the proposal that the commission put forward would basically eliminate the Detroit portion of my district, and instead I would gain Madison Heights, Hazel Park, and about half of the city of Warren. So a little bit into Macomb County, very different district.
Different district, similar demographics.
Yep.
Similar economic households as it relates to income.
Yep.
Little change in political demographics a little bit, but I think that with your background and what your goals and objectives over the past years probably will fit in quite well.
Yeah, and it's, you know, people have asked me how I feel about it, and I got into office in a Republican district. My first district was exclusively in Oakland County. It included places like Bloomfield Hills and Rochester Hills, places that had never elected a Democrat. I beat the Republican incumbent in that district. I swung that district 20 points from what he had previously won by into me taking office. And then I was redrawn into the most Democratic district in the state. But I will say, what I've really enjoyed about this district is it's the entire spectrum. I represent some of the wealthiest residents in the state in places like Birmingham and some communities in Detroit that are really, really struggling. And I think there's a benefit in forcing your elected officials to think about the entire spectrum. So I'm a little bit upset to lose that moving forward. I think that has forced me to become a better legislator, but that's the luck of the
So with
the
all
draw.
with all this diversity, inside the state of Michigan, with each time you ran for office, there's growth there. There's change. Sounds to me as if you might have the makings of maybe a future gubernatorial candidate.
Well, I haven't made any decisions yet, but I've definitely been thinking about it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one question would be, how would you suggest that we engage young people in the process, the political process, the governmental process? How do we engage them? How do we get them involved?
I know this is going to sound shocking, but listen to them. I think people consistently underestimate young people. And I can tell you this, when I was running for the first time for this seat, for the state Senate seat, I got an email one day from high school students in the wake of the Parkland shooting who wanted to sit down with me at a coffee shop at 8 a.m. on a Sunday, and they wanted to grill me about what I was going to do about gun violence. And I took that meeting, and that's not what I was doing when I was 15 years old. I wasn't. They want to be heard, they want to be taken seriously, and I think the importance of particularly down ballot races is they want to see people who look like them.
Right.
I'm in my now late 30s, but comparatively to a lot of people, I am closer to their age than maybe somebody at the top, and I can relate to working my way through college or what it was like when I got my license or struggles in high school. People want to feel represented, and I
Right.
think that has to be by age as well.
So tell us about you. You're not originally from Michigan, are you? Or-
I'm not originally
Yeah.
from Michigan. That is a scandalous thing for anybody running for office in Michigan.
Not really. I don't think so.
I don't think so. It was interesting. I thought it would be, but
Michiganders go for the heart.
we do. And there was something about this place. I've lived in 5 states. I grew up in rural New Jersey, which I swear is a real place. Graduated from the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, and then spent a lot of my career between Southern California and New York. I was a car designer for Mazda. I was a creative director for Gawker Media in New York. I was a partner in a production company doing documentaries and Super Bowl ads, all kinds of things. But my husband, Ray, is a 4th generation Royal Oaker. He's a lifelong Michigander. And we moved back, and Michigan allowed me to become the best version of myself. This was a place that welcomed me with open arms. I really loved this attitude, particularly in the Metro Detroit area. People want to work together. They want to figure out, what do you do? Here's what I do. How can we combine our skills and make this place better for all of us? And that's not something that I felt in places like New York or LA,
Right.
where you are a small fish in a big pond, and it's really cutthroat, and everybody's out to get you, and you don't necessarily know who to trust. And that's why I decided to run for office the first time. I left my career behind. I put my name on a ballot.
You left a lot of money on the table.
Left a lot of money on the table. Thanks to Ray for keeping our family afloat. This is a family sacrifice,
Right.
public service. But it's the best career move I ever made. And if I can give back,
Yeah.
that's what it's about.
What seems to be working?
It's doing
Let's talk
okay.
about sacrifices. How was growing up? I mean, we've talked about some challenges. Let's start with coming out of high school, going to college. I'll let you tell the story.
Oh yeah, so I was somebody that school always came really easily to. My mom always really supported me. My parents got divorced when I was really young. She got married, she got divorced again. Everything wasn't always steady, but I always loved school until I got to the end of high school. And all of the sudden, where I had years of being able to ace everything I did without ever studying for a test, I struggled and I failed 2 classes. And this was after I had gotten accepted to Notre Dame. And they sent a letter threatening to unaccept me. And I didn't know why. It led to a year of really ugly fights with my mom, trying to figure out, you know, why was I skipping out on turning in assignments? Why was I not writing these papers? And it wasn't until 2 years into college that I met somebody who said, you know, I have ADHD, and it sounds like you're going through a lot of what I went through. And I finally went through the process. I found a psychiatrist, I got diagnosed, and it was like a massive weight was lifted off of my shoulders and my mom's, frankly. It helped us restore our relationship because there wasn't anything wrong with me.
Right.
It's that once I was asked to do more independent work, it was a real struggle. It didn't come as easily. And that has been something that has radically improved my life ever since, realizing how my brain works. I think I'm suited to this job because I'm able to jump around to events, to talking to people, to writing, in ways that I don't know that I would have ended up here had I not figured that out about myself.
And there are several viewers that are watching now, fathers, mothers, grandparents, who probably are saying, that might be the problem with our daughter or our son or our grandson. What advice would you give them, and what are some of the signs that maybe there needs to be some type of further testing or evaluation?
Yeah, you know, I think that it's something that, even when I was growing up, I think that a lot is misunderstood about it. You think about the hyperactivity part, and you typically think of, you know, that kid who can't sit still in class, and that wasn't me. And I also wasn't somebody who was struggling. I was, you know, naturally gifted at a lot of things. But what ADHD really is your brain lacks the ability to decide what the next step is. So you get overwhelmed. If there are 30 things on your plate, you know that you have to wash dishes and pay bills. You have to wash your car, you have to pick your kid up, you have to go to work. All of the things that I think people who don't have ADHD don't struggle just to do those things. People with ADHD get overwhelmed by, you know, those basic life skills. Things like paying bills on time becomes a real challenge because it's not the thing that's on fire. It's kind of those rote, sort of boring things that your brain forgets to do because you're just constantly jumping to putting fires out. So I think if you see somebody who you love and you're like, well, this can't be my kid because my kid's really smart. It has nothing to do with intelligence. Are they struggling with keeping their room clean, figuring out where they put their keys, figuring out, you know, when the last time they called their mom was? That is the sign that it might be ADHD, and it's not a negative. It's just you need help figuring out how to help your brain decide what the next right step is, so you don't get overwhelmed and shut down.
That's good advice. And I spent several years in education in the classroom, and back when I was a teacher or administrator, a lot of parents would go to the doctor, and the first thing, and I don't know why this was, the first thing was, oh, the kid needs to be put on drugs. It was either a Ritalin or something else, and that would calm the kid down during the daytime where they're not even, they can't even focus because they're zoned out. And then a lot of cases, the parents wouldn't give them the drugs until they got home to calm them down at home. So there was a double whammy negative effect on the child. So I think that, you know, your suggestions and advice based on personal experience is very good.
Yeah, and it's finding what works for you. You know, there were years that I tried to go without medication, thinking I'll power my way through it. I bought a lot of planners. I watched way too many YouTube videos about like the perfect organizational systems. And the thing that really changed for me was a few years ago, I decided to focus less on my work goals and more on my personal goals. You know, I recognized that I was not somebody who sent thank you cards. And I wasn't somebody who followed up with text to get coffee with somebody. Not because I didn't want to, but because I forgot. And I recognized that my personal relationships were hurting, and that's what I wanted to fix. So I went back to my doctor. I am on medication, it helps, but finding, you know, the system that works for you when it works for you, not to use it just to calm a kid down.
Right.
You'll know it's right when it feels like you're able to just take a breath and look around at all the things you have to do and say, I'm going to start by cleaning my room. And then I'll move on to the next thing.
Right.
Which to anybody else is probably listening to this like, well, yeah, why wouldn't you do
Right,
that? But that's the hardest thing for somebody with ADHD.
Now, there in 2022, there was this video that just went viral everywhere. I mean, it was international, and
Yeah.
so maybe some of our viewers know about this. But tell us what happened and what led up to this that made you this international household name overnight.
Oh, it was wild. So this was now, 2022 was my first term, but I was 3 years into office. I came in, like a lot of particularly women in 2018, it was the year of the woman, and we had done all of these incredible things, and I came in really optimistic about what we would be able to get done in government. And 3 years in, I had never gotten a single hearing on any bill that I had introduced because the Republican majority leader didn't like me and had decided he was going to ostracize me. And then I woke up one morning to a screenshot of an email that a colleague had sent out for herself, fundraising. And she was fundraising by accusing me by name of wanting to groom and sexualize kindergartners and wanting 8-year-olds to believe they were responsible for slavery. And it was just, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
It was the last straw.
It was, because I had gotten used to kind of being a punching bag. When I ran for the first time, the statewide GOP sent out a huge mailer about me in which they stole a photo of me drinking a margarita by a pool, and they put a curling iron on it. And the curling iron said, "Vote no on McMorrow." So, the Detroit Free Press wrote a whole piece about how it was the most sexist thing they'd ever seen, and they had diminished me to just like this silly girl instead of somebody who had a career and accomplishments that led to being in office. So I was used to being attacked, and I had pretty thick skin. But there was something about this, and the fact that it was levied at me by another woman, another mom. My daughter was 1 at the time, and this language, about groomers, and that's pulled straight out of QAnon.
Right.
This is the same type of language that led a gunman to open fire at a pizza parlor in DC, thinking that there were groomers led by Hillary Clinton who were keeping kids trapped in a basement.
Right.
Like, it's the most insane thing, but it's that language in this moment that I was worried about my daughter and my family, and would somebody show up at my house thinking that it was true. So I decided that night that I was going to respond. I didn't know how I was going to respond, and I had also sort of decided that I tried my best in this job. Maybe it's not worth it. I haven't gotten anything done. There were a lot of people who donated to me and knocked doors for me, and I felt like I had let everybody down. So I sort of decided I have nothing left to lose. This is probably the last speech I'm ever going to give. And I got up the next day.
Did you prepare text? Did you have
Oh,
bullets?
I wrote it. I
Okay.
wrote it, and I
Okay.
rewrote it, and
Right.
I rewrote
And that's a
it.
technique that you use primarily for ADHD. You kind of write things out,
Yeah,
right?
write it, and I practice it. So
Yes. Okay,
it takes me
good.
90 minutes to 2 hours to get to
Okay.
Lansing in the car. And I repeated over and over and over what I wanted to say, and kind of edited it in my head until it sounded good. Because, something that you write down may read well, but there's a difference in what it sounds like.
Right.
And I recognized as I was kind of writing everything that originally I'd written about Lee Chatfield, the Speaker of the House, and he had just been revealed by his sister-in-law for potentially grooming and raping her starting when she was 15. So I was writing about the hypocrisy on the other side of the aisle. And I took all of that out because I recognized that if me, as a
was
Democrat,
personal,
stood
yeah.
up there and said, well, the Republicans do
Yeah.
this, that nobody would listen. So instead, I decided to take my own identity back. So I talked about being the quote was, a straight, white, Christian, married suburban mom who knows that hate will only win when people like me let it happen. And this was in the midst of kind of the rise of Moms for Liberty and these groups that were forming to attack school boards for, DEI curriculum and LGBTQ kids in books and all of these things. And I wanted to talk to women like that and say, this is on us. This is happening because of us. And I gave the speech. I put a video of it up online, and within 24 hours, 12 million people saw it.
Right. That's amazing.
Took off from there.
You're right. And you did all the national television shows. And what was the reaction from the Republicans when you were getting all that? Was there any?
One of the most.
Or this lady.
She never responded to me.
Yeah.
She never said, I'm sorry. She gave one interview to a local Capital News source afterwards. And it made me really sad listening to it. It was a long interview. And you could hear her on the verge of tears that she legitimately believed some of these crazy conspiracy theories. She cited libs of TikTok as a source for, this idea that there were teachers grooming kids in schools. And it just made me really sad that she believed that and believed that somehow I was a part of this thing that simply isn't happening.
Right.
None of my Republican colleagues ever apologized to me that term. John DeMoose, who's a current senator on the other side of the aisle, when he came into the Senate at the start of this term, he sought me out and he said, I don't know you, but I watched that video and I'm so sorry that ever happened to you. And that was 2 years later, a year later. It took that long for somebody to say, this was horrible and it shouldn't have happened to you.
You actively fundraised, I don't know, intentionally or not intentionally, off of that to help other causes, mainly Democratic causes, but talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we, the point was to stand up for myself. It wasn't to raise money. But from just the video alone, probably within that first 24 hours, we had raised more than $600,000 of people just finding my website naturally on their own and donating to my campaign.
And I think the main focus was to keep Democratic control.
Well, it was, but
Lansing,
what we realized pretty quickly was, people found my campaign and I had more than enough money than I could ever possibly legally spend on a Democratic primary. So I was good. So I opened a PAC, and that PAC was dedicated towards supporting other Democratic senators running in Michigan, because this is a level of government that nobody ever thinks about or cares about. Everybody is worried about the presidency and what that means for the future of the country. But this is the level that makes decisions that actually impacts our everyday lives.
It's so ironic in a way because all politics are local.
But it's, people still get caught up, and I think particularly for Democrats, I'm speaking as a Democrat, I think Democrats are always looking for who's the next Barack Obama. And I don't think that's a wrong desire, but it's done so at the expense of the rest of the infrastructure. During President Obama's tenure in office, Democrats lost 1,000 seats in state legislatures around the country. And if you want to talk about the fall of Roe or what's happening in the Supreme Court, I think that's where it started. It started from the bottom up because all politics is local.
Right.
So I recognize that I was given a very unique opportunity with a national spotlight. I was on cable news at least once a week in a way that no other state legislator was. So if I could turn national attention to our state in a moment when we had an opportunity for the first time since 1984 to flip control of the Senate, that's what I was going to do with that money. We set out to raise $1 million, which I remember we called a little team meeting with my husband and I and 2 other people. That was our professional team. And we thought, that's crazy. There's no way we're going to raise $1 million. That's an astronomical amount of money. And we ended the year with $2.5 million.
Wow. You set goals and you go for them, and you're even going to quote, you quoted Big Sean, I think, a second ago.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So as we come to a close, I just want to hit on a couple points. what do you consider that has to be the hugest accomplishment, but those are my words. What do you consider your biggest accomplishments while you've been an elected official?
Something I'm really, really proud of, and I had this opportunity after the speech. I got to travel all over Michigan and all over the country. And I probably talked with thousands of people who wanted to learn how they could do this too. They were inspired by what they saw, and I've been able to have these conversations and share tips about, how to tell a story in a way that doesn't alienate people. You have to get people on your side. Where to donate your money, where it's going to make the most impact, why 2 hours of knocking on doors is going to make you feel a hell of a lot better than doom scrolling on your phone. And that's what I'm really proud of.
Good point.
If I can help other people find out how powerful they actually are, especially in a moment like this where I think a lot of people feel really helpless, that's what I'm really, really proud of. And I love doing it. Well,
So that being said, looking back, a younger Mallory McMorrow, what advice would you have? What would you have changed? What advice would you have given yourself? What would you have done differently as you reflect back on life?
I don't think I would have done anything differently. I think kids are too hard on themselves. I think if I was able to provide a crystal ball into my future and remind myself, you're going to be okay. This might feel like crap right now, but you're going to be okay. I try to go back to my alma mater and sit down with kids, and they want to map out their entire lives and their entire career, and you don't have to. There's no perfect first job. There's no perfect career, and you might get that job and realize, I'm not really good at this,
Right.
or I don't like it.
Yeah.
And you want to be flexible enough to decide, well, where do I go next? And I think just take some of the pressure off.
I've learned more from failures than I have from successes.
Yeah. So I wouldn't want to warn myself, you got to go through the hard things
Yeah.
to figure out who you are and how you navigate them. So I wouldn't want to fix that.
Good. All right. So with all that, what do you do for fun? You got to have a life. You got
I try.
a couple kids, right?
Daughter's 3.
Okay, one
kid.
daughter, yeah.
She is a riot. She is learning how to swim.
Yeah.
So we
I
are
remember
learning that.
attending an event that you were at and your daughter was at, and I mean, she took over the show.
Oh, she is so funny. I took her to Lansing. There was a gap one day between, the end of preschool for the year and kind of summer school. So she got to come to Lansing with me for a day, and she was coloring at my desk. And it was in the middle of session, and she took off and she started darting through all the desks, and she ran down the center aisle, and one of the Republicans on the other side just yelled, "Freedom!" And they had so much fun. Like, she was a riot. She's an absolute blast. I'm a runner. I like running. It's definitely helped with ADHD. I really love just exploring the community. It's a great way to see it.
Right.
I'm a huge craft beer fan.
Okay.
So, like, trying new beers.
Okay.
And I'm trying to get better at cooking.
All right.
Usually my husband does it, but I'm trying to
Right.
trying to pick up some skills.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, we're going to do a little rapid fire.
All right.
This is the end. I'm going to throw some things at you. Make a choice. Just shoot it out. Don't think about it much. Favorite place to vacation in the state of Michigan?
Elk Rapids.
Okay. Why?
It is a little more remote. There's not that many people up there. I am, I think because I'm so outgoing in this job, I kind of like to be alone when I go on vacation. So I bring my paddleboard, I sit out on the water, and I read a bunch of books.
Favorite place outside the state?
In the world or in the country?
World. That's fine.
Man, I loved Amsterdam when I visited.
I loved Amsterdam.
Loved Amsterdam. The food was great. And everybody, I like places where people are friendly.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to introduce themselves and show you around. I really like that vibe. And I love New York. Right, my husband and I lived in New York for a little while. I'm glad I don't live there anymore. I would never live there again. But I love having lived there long enough that I know my way around.
New
I know where
York's
I
a
like
great
to
place. If I could go to New York every year, I would.
It's great.
Especially around the holiday, November, December.
Christmas in New York is the most
Yes, it is.
magical place
Yes, it is.
in the world.
Tacos or I should say Mexican or Chinese?
Oh, Mexican. Tacos all day long.
Favorite sports team?
I mean, the Lions' comeback story is just so intoxicating. my husband, lifelong Lions fan. His dad passed away a few years ago, and just watching, I like to live vicariously. So watching my husband react to the Lions' last run last season, he was just in tears, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But I grew up a Mets fan, which was deeply sad.
Oh, that's torture as well.
Oh, terrible.
Fago or Vernors?
Vernors.
I love Vernors.
I love it.
But I love Fago too. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us. This has been absolutely rewarding. I'm sure our viewers got a lot out of it. And just for those who are watching, our air conditioning went out in this place.
So we look a little
we're
dewy.
both looking a little hot here.
Yeah.
And it's not because I had the hard questions.
We're glowing. I was a bartender for years, and they always said when I worked outside,
Man,
"Not
you've
sweaty,
done
but
everything.
glowing."
You've been a bartender.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, the auto designer.
Yep.
You didn't mention the bartending.
You got to pay for school somehow.
Yeah, I got it. I swept floors, and I was actually worked at a restaurant picking up
Hard work.
busboy.
Hard work.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you again for joining us with our Senator, Mallory McMorrow, with Casual Conversations with Mario Morrow. Thank you. See you next time.